Welcome to the grim, lawless 23rd century, following the fall of U.S. Gov and mass depopulation of major cities at the hands of the multi-trillionaire DeHuberton family. Baptized in radioactive hellfire, a rare mutation makes Turbo a fiercely pumped scrapper, haunted by specters from her past, surviving the post-apocalyptic wasteland one deathmatch pit fight at a time. But when she rescues the stunning trophy girl, the unlikely duo are thrust into a harrowing odyssey, evading marauding berserkers at every turn on their way to the ultimate showdown as they uncover the horrific truth behind the fall of humanity.
Howdy-ho, Jake. How you feeling?
Hey ho, Kurt. Welcome back, everybody. We are just taping another on the road segment of Making Turbo Pit Fighter.
Yeah,
At the current moment,
square up that.
I'm drawing.
Yeah, let's scare. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, hold that. Oh gosh, that's so cool. Nice.
Well, yeah, I just did this while we're here. I'm drawing a sci-fi vehicle, and as I said in the last episode, this is going to be just a vehicle that tails our protagonists for a little while once they enter the unnamed city that we have to name. I want to name it like something like El Bravo or whatever.
Right.
Um, but our weary travelers are going to be finding Mr. Ike on the road, and then they're going to be they're just going to be tailed by a vehicle. So I said, let me design a vehicle. But we were having a very fascinating discussion
Right. But
when we left
let's
off.
just connect to our last episode. So last week episode, which was recorded 30 seconds ago. You're on spring break, so you're on vacation, but you've brought your equipment with you or what you need to be able to say hello and catch us up. And I also wanted to bring attention that I had bought a long arm full metal stapler. So when we get the
There you go.
teaser done too, because it's 4 pages, 11 by 17, I'll be able to do my own stapling. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. But yeah, the cliffhanger was you were going deep state controversy of with, shutting other countries down with the ability to investigate and find out how to make nuclear weapons. I think that's where you left us off.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's any secret that the U.S. has been in a Cold War for decades. Certainly after World War II, in real life. But in our story, one of the themes, one of the that I'd really like to recur is, I want to take this example of what's happened in real life with nuclear secrets, let's say, right? I mean, it could be other stuff. Like another possibility would be bioweapons, right? Like
Ooh,
the ability to create a virus, right?
yeah, yeah.
And right now that needs advanced scientists working on it, and you have to have proof of the efficacy of your theories and everything, and what you're saying. Like, if somebody says, "Hey, I can make a biological weapon and we can unleash this on our enemies," that it has to be scientifically right. So you need real scientists working on this, but this brings up the theme of kind of like the mad scientist, right? Um,
Yeah.
Now you saw Oppenheimer, right?
Oh,
The
yeah.
movie?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Woo.
so Oppenheimer, right? So we just had this big Hollywood, blockbuster, award-winning movie, and it grapples with the historical, account of the guy who helped develop the nuclear bomb. He led the team, right? And his moral dilemmas about creating a bomb that the U.S. Unleashed, and we dropped it on Hiroshima, then we dropped it on Nagasaki. We killed 50,000 people in the flash of of a millisecond, and that was an ethical decision made by the president of the U.S. at the time, Harry Truman, But the scientists who developed the weapon, they were told in this great pivotal scene. I guess I can, reveal if because
Spoiler.
it's spoiling a movie, but this was his. This is
You're,
this is
yeah, you should have been.
I
You should
love
have gotten this in seventh grade.
right. I know. I love that. I saw a great single panel cartoon of two people that were online to see the movie JFK,
Yeah.
and they were like, I wonder how it ends, you know?
That's awesome. I love
Right.
that shit.
So so let's take that the moral ethical dilemma. Like, should Oppenheimer have refused to work on it, or even
Somebody
worse, like
else would
should
have.
he have,
Somebody else would
or
have.
would he have, or should he have sabotaged it? Right. That's the other
Nah.
question. But the point being, right, there is going to be scientific discovery after scientific discovery for centuries and millennia, as long as the human race is still there. And if there are going to be things, and so that come up that could be used for good or ill. And, they talk about, like, with cops, these flags that you see, like the thin blue line.
Yeah.
And the theory there is, like, there's a US flag, but there's one line that's like blue instead of red. And, they say, well, if not for law enforcement, our entire society could break down in 1 minute, and, everybody would be at our throats, at each other's throats, like a purge movie. Now, I disagree with that. I think, what's really keeping that from happening is the morals and the ethics of everyday people. Because if you even had like 10% of our society that decided they wanted to be lawless, our police are only like 2%, right?
If that.
So they would overwhelm, and that's going to be one of the points in our timeline, is when the US government is overwhelmed. There's going to be the DeHuberton family, who is going to be, this kind of like lawless military force. But there's also going to be all of the freebooters out there, that are just out for their own little slice of their own territory,
Well,
and that's going to
so
complicate things
you
too.
had said you saw Civil War, which I've watched about a dozen reviews of it, and none of them were positive. But I think the really interesting part of the disappointment the reviewers had of Civil War is that it's not about a civil war; it's about journalism, which is super. Now that actually, when I heard that finally in the reviews, somebody had come out and said it was, you're like, now you're thinking like, whoa, so this is something to help, let's say, uplift the journalistic integrity. So my first question, and I'm hoping it kind of ties back into what your trajectory is on, society, people, government, and companies, is did you is that a part of Civil War? Is that really like a message being put off, or a question?
Yeah, it's the focus of Civil War. You think you're gonna watch this movie about, like, America breaking apart, into factions, and they have this concept where California and Texas join forces. They call the Western forces.
That's funny.
But there are a lot of other red states, that are sympathetic to them, but that haven't broken away because the government is actively in combat with them in hot war. And when the movie begins, it centers on a photojournalist, your photographer, basically. It's what's her name again? The one that played
Claire
Mary
Danes.
Jane in the no,
Oh,
it's not her. The one that played Mary Jane in the Spider-Man one
was
when
that
she was
Claire
younger.
Danes?
No, I think her name was Kristen something, or
Oh, Durst. Yeah, Kristen Dunst.
yeah, yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
Durst.
Kristen Dunst. Thank you. Yeah. So she's older now. And she's kind of like this embattled combat photographer. And I think the story gets underway when she meets this young, brand new, like baby face photographer that wants to get into this field, and like, oh my God, I can't believe I met her. the award-winning, combat journalist and combat photographer. And so they go out on this trek to interview the president because the president in D.C. is under siege and close to surrendering. And so they're on their way down there in this kind of like, war-torn landscape. And I won't, go too, I won't like, do the ending or whatever or too much, but, antics ensue. And, the questions that come up are, what we choose to show, what these people who have the power, because, the story sets them up as working for the New York Times and, whatever the big papers are, who can just upload these, right to the bureau, and these are the images that the world sees or not, and so they can choose to, hide it and or whatever, and so it's a commentary on the horrors of war, but at the same time, it's so hypocritical because that's how you're getting people in the seats to see this movie, right? It's like all of this special effects, big budget, war footage, right? And and then when we get there, we're told, "Oh my God, this is all terrible." That all this stuff that you're eating your popcorn and
You
watching,
should
right?
be
That you paid this
ashamed of
thing
yourself. You should be ashamed of
exactly,
yourself
and
for
it's so
paying
it
$37.95 to watch this movie. You should be
right, it's
ashamed.
right in the IMAX, right? So it's very, very kind of like, convoluted, and that's always how Hollywood is. If they try to have some kind of moralistic message about, violence after they get people in the door with it. Um,
Yeah, well, so
and
everybody knows what's best for you, Jake. And if you would just please do us the favor, me specifically, and just listen to me when I tell you what it is and how it should be, we would be a lot further along with this comic book.
right, well, that's right,
But let me add
yeah,
to
and
that.
that
Let me add to that. The thing about you and I collaborating and making a comic book is exactly what I just said. In other words, if one of us was trying to take over the other, or at least try to get level above in order to push something, then the let's say the one that's not being heard or the one that's not being is going to become less and less and less connected, which means then I go and find somebody else to work with or something, then at a point. But the whole thing is that constant, knocking heads,
give and
just
take,
not butting heads.
yeah, give
You
and
and I,
take,
we haven't gotten to any point where we're butting heads, but we are knocking on each other's heads, going like, "Do you really want to do that? I don't know. I don't really think that's the way it should be. What do you think?" And you have to say something. I have to say something, and then we have to make a decision, right? And that's critical thinking in, like, let's say, a very quick and easy way is just stop. Let me listen to Jake. And the other cool part is we get to go back and listen to it on podcasts. So we get to listen to this
and
recording.
cringe,
Well, I
right,
have, well, this one, maybe once or twice I've cringed where I've kind of tried to make a position and hold it and then think later, like, nah. And so maybe
right,
that next time we're on
sure,
recording, I'm like backtracking myself and just getting us moving forward, because compromise is very, very
well, that's
difficult.
being human,
Yeah, it's very
yeah,
difficult.
that's yeah, I mean, that's one of the keys about, a movie like Civil War. It's magnifying the polarization that we're
Yeah,
seeing in our
yeah,
society,
yeah.
and it's asking what would happen if this turned violent. They don't go too into like Trump or anything, or too political. They're just like, it's a given when the movie opens that, we've been at war for a long time, and and they don't really explain, why, which is, probably a smart thing to do because the movie studio said, no, we don't want, we want to have left and right watch this movie, and we want it to be, a commentary on other things rather than the specifics of why Americans aren't getting along. But just in terms of like society and what's going to happen as technology races forward, not not at the old pace, but at a faster and faster pace. it's going to be these ethical dilemmas. And so our story is going to grapple with, a character, Elevena, who, cracks the code to, biomechanics, like on the, at some point we are going to understand the quantum world, and we're going to be able to make leaps and bounds in manipulating, nutrition, and manipulating, health and physiology. Imagine if 100 years from now, if they crack the code for nanotechnology and they could put stuff in the water that just makes it 10 times more efficient, and healthy and stuff, or the opposite, so a lot is going to depend on who's in charge, and what the scientists discover, and if they're going to hand it over, to the biggest water, retailers, or if they're going to hand it over to, UNICEF, and all those kind of
Well,
questions.
I do believe that, having government institutions like the FDA do whatever it is they do, whether they're getting paid under the table to move something along, there still needs to be something documented that this has been tested, whether it's on mice and then rabbits and monkeys and pigs and whatever, and then human trials and stuff like that. So, there is
And that's part
always,
of the story. Yes,
yeah.
that is going to be
There's
there.
always that, like, wow, do we really need this right now? Yes, okay, but at what cost? I don't care. I just want it right now. And that's a portion of our society, which are what they refer to as early adopters. But then there's people that I'm definitely in a camp on, which is like, I'm skeptical. Like, let's let this go for whatever period of time and watch whatever the after effects are. So I agree with you, but I also disagree that it's going to take 100 years. I think we're going to be in a very, very rapid movement technologically, nano, uh, nutritional, healthcare. There's going to be a ton of things because of this AI platform. These platforms jockeying for, inception, into our society, and yeah, control by once again these corporate families, and how they're also trying to use that to shape public opinion and value, which is you know
So that's going to be our story. It's going to be, what happens when the code is cracked, and it's not just like food and nutrition and water. It's also going to be human enhancement.
yeah.
And Elevena will be, um, she'll be born enhanced. Her mother is going to build her, with incredible intelligence. So she will be, from a very young age, the scientist. And when I say young age, I mean like, under 10 years old. The scientist that is able to crack all of these mysteries. And of course, in the future, it's not just going to be like somebody figuring something out on their own. It's going to be who can put the prompts in the AI, and who has the most, quantum computer arrays, right? That can actually process all the data. And then, part of the story of Elevena is going to, young Elevena before she turns 18 is going to be, all these conceptual trials where nanoparticles can be tested on the cellular level before you even have to do animal or human trials. And then, you can prove these things.
Well, that's AI.
And
That's what AI is going to be able to.
well,
So
AI
supposedly,
will,
it's supposedly going to help speed up that which is data driven. So if you
but it
compile
also has to
data,
be it also has to be robotics, and that's where physical, regular physics comes in, Newtonian physics, and Einsteinian physics. It's going to be, if you have a concept and you can take this, let's say you can take this element and mix it with this other element and get this reaction, especially on the nano level,
yeah,
you need a little robot arm to be able to do that and put that into, 600 little vials to try it against every other, element or every other, combination of nanoparticle, in order to do all the trial and error, and it might take hundreds or thousands or millions of trials before you stumble upon something. And so in the story, it's just going to be that Elevena is ahead of everybody else in her research, and then it falls into the wrong hands, and that's when the DeHuberton family uses it for ill, and they're able they're able to take control. They're able to put themselves above everybody else, and including the U.S. Gov and the scientific community. And there's going to be a part. There's going to be a part in this timeline where the last bulwark against these mad scientists or these corporatists who have just enough scientists to put to put the technology into operation. The last bulwark is going to be the scientific community. And I'm going to have this thing where scientists, like, are you a scientist? You're not a scientist, right? And I'm gonna have this like really fateful scene where Elevena is gonna have a showdown against the Unbeknownst One when he's younger, and and don't forget, like, Turbo is gonna meet Elevena in the prison, and we're gonna see Elevena's death scene in Turbo Pit Fighter number 4 or 3 or 4 or something like that. And and the Unbeknownst One will be right there. And, her big line to him is going to be, "You're not a scientist. You were never a scientist." You know, so we're trying to bring in some sci-fi, some melodrama, maybe some B-movie stuff. But one of the things that I'm trying to do here, and I spend all my like free time thinking about is the everything of the story, right? Like, and I've spoken before about how, like, the Terminator only zeroes in on AI and how it becomes self-aware. Road Warrior only zeroes in on the lack of gasoline and the fight over resources. But in real life, it's going to be all about everything all the time. And so in our story, I'm trying to, think about everything all the time. I do think about that. You brought up an interesting point about, Orwell was wrong because he never thought that, we would have all this subversion going on, but that we would be doing it to ourselves as a form of entertainment,
Correct.
right? And that we would all be putting all of our intimate details online
Yeah.
voluntarily, and that would be weaponized against us in the 2016 election,
Yep.
and we're at this part now where we're kind of realizing it, but at the same time, it's still going full steam ahead with TikTok and with younger kids. Our youngest kids, are picking up these smartphones and putting every detail of their lives on there. It will be, exploited later. It will be used against them, and there's no way to stop this slow motion train.
Well,
So,
here another. So just to not leave the
yeah,
Orwell
you,
thing.
yeah,
Now,
you go.
do you believe Orwell's 1984 was made as a science fiction novel to be read as entertainment?
Or as opposed to what? A warning?
Social
A po
commentary.
right, a
I mean,
political,
no, I don't
right,
think it was
a
political. I
poli
think it was completely socialized. I mean, he was a socialist, and I mean, I don't even want to dive into the whole George Orwell thing. I've watched a
yeah,
hundred documentaries.
he was a
Yeah,
self-avowed anti-fascist.
yeah,
And he also, don't forget, the pigs and Animal
yeah.
Farm too.
Oh, yeah.
He was using his, metaphors as, biting social commentary on the way that, human um, nature, corrupts, anybody with power. He's got those famous lines like, some are more equal than others. 1984 was absolutely prescient. I mean, what I love you know, is that the other side, refers to Orwell all the time, right? Like, they say it's positively Orwellian what
Yeah,
the liberals are doing,
yeah.
in trying to go after Donald Trump. you know, and it's like, well, there's, there's some meat on that bone, but but propaganda goes in,
Do you
both
remember the
in
first
every
time? Do
direction.
you remember the first time watching the movie with John Hurt?
You talk, you talking about 1984?
Yeah.
I didn't have a good watch of the movie. No, I don't even think I
Did you
saw it
read it in high
full through.
school? Did you read it in high school?
Yes, I read it and I really took it in when I read it.
Oh,
Yeah.
I did too. But here's the thing: my English teacher, Gary Boom, was one of the best English teachers we ever had. He made us read Red Badge of Courage, Lord of the Flies, Animal Farm, 1984.
The
But
classic.
we got to watch the movie.
Right.
And I remember, but you had to, you had like a week or whatever, 2 weeks to read or read as much, but whatever. I remember getting halfway through the movie, sitting in a dimly lit high school English class, thinking this is not very fun. Like Lord of the Flies, I thought was fun in my just lack of understanding it yet. Red Badge of Courage, I didn't think was fun. Of course, Animal Farm is a cartoon, so that has some fun to it. But I remember being severely disappointed in 1984 as a movie because it wasn't like Mad Max.
No, it's not a classic movie.
Yeah. And
The
I
book
was
is
even
the book is
struggling. I was even struggling to read it, but as I was struggling to read it, thinking, "Oh wow," because it was so connected to these post-apocalyptic made for VHS. I mean, Road Warrior and Mad Max were not made for VHS, but that's how I saw them. And so there's this fuzzy place maybe in the '80s is what I'm suspecting, where we were being kind of given this like short bag of goods, which was like, hey, don't worry about it, don't read it, don't think, don't become critical in it, just see the movie.
right. But
I
the
don't see
movie
your
fell short.
camera.
I
Did
mean,
you
the
turn your camera off?
yeah, I did.
Okay.
I don't think I had that. I was going to move on to a new sketch, but this I think this is
Oh,
good enough
you can do it.
for
Yeah,
our
do it.
purpose.
That's fine.
Um, so yeah, the book 1984 is still assigned to millions of kids every year, and maybe tens worldwide. The movie is not big. It's not shared. It's not in the pantheon. So that's a treatment that didn't catch on. Even with the great story behind it. You know. I would say that probably, um, you know, Hunger Games, became more
Okay.
of a a social kind of landmark or touchstone or keystone, or point of commentary. And so the public is fickle when it comes to to that. 1984 might be good literature, but um, you know when it comes to Hollywood, the people like what they like, and they don't like that movie as much. It's just kind of there.
So you
Um,
didn't like it?
well, I didn't. I probably never saw it full the way through.
Oh, really? I think it's
All in
great.
one sitting.
Well, see, I'm a
Yeah, I
huge
mean,
John Hurt
maybe.
fan, but I think it's
Yeah,
great. I think
it
it holds up so well, like the book.
really. So,
Yeah.
Kurt, there you go, folks. Kurt's giving the recommendation. Um, you know, I I think about sci-fi that's come before us, and I'm trying to think about sci-fi for for the future. Is it going to be books even? Because everyone's trying to get attention. You're trying to get your story out to people, but um, what format will that take? If you design it for VHS, then something comes along in 15 years and VHS is no longer a thing. You know, Blu-ray, whatever. I mean, is it visual? Should it be animated? That's another good question. There's been some great sci-fi like Fantastic Planet, dystopian kind of animation. I mean, you could even talk about heavy metal movie Fact Two if you want to say like what's considered a box office flop and a total loss of money. But it still you got the format of animation, presenting a sci-fi story. So ours is a little bit different. We're centering on a printed comic, but we're also, building this world and really try to think conceptually about it. Um, you know, and we're just kind of like plodding forward with, this backstory that's it's kind of writing itself for me, but there's a lot of like capturing it. I mean, I have all these raw notes that haven't even made it onto the page yet. They're just in my phone. But we're gonna have a lot of commentary about the way that the moment that we're in now, and thinking forward about how it could really mess up our society and how things could really go bad. And it's getting more and more dystopian and depressing until you get to, of course, the turbo era where um, there's mostly wasteland in North America, and people are um, entertained by the most violent thing imaginable, which is like you know pit fights to the death, and that's kind of like where everybody ends up kind of like coming together in the society, even only for these events, but there's betting, and there's factions, there's heroes and villains. Another thing that we should probably keep mentioning is the radioactive currency, right? That's another thing, where the money is valuable because it can power like a vehicle or a weapon, but it also is killing you to own it, right? To be close to it. And so there, the shielding becomes important. Like, you could have a lot of money but poor shielding, and it will kill you, little by little, unless you have the physiology to withstand it, which could be either augmented or natural born. So we'll have a couple of these little variants, but I love where this is going. We have so much just like raw promise here, and I think just the two of us, trying to turn this into funnel all this into a comic is impossible, and that has led us to this podcast where we kind of just discuss it, just talking. But then also, we're going to have this Substack, which it sounds like it could be really, really fun if it's
Oh, it's
just
gonna be.
like, yeah, and it's going to allow us to have all these talks about, these different aspects of, life that are, that we're just going to fast forward, in 200 years, into the 2200s, and then all along the way, from the late 2090s into the early 2140s. I have an entry here for the 2150s, where Esoterra is born, and then 2163, 2168, and all along the way, what's going to happen? When Elavina is born, that's going to be later. I think she's going to be born in 2198. And so Turbo will be born about 20 years after that, right? And because Elevate is going to be about 24 when during 2222, when the government falls and everything just goes to like you're on your own. But yeah, so just in the interest of time, I'm going to play spin the wheel, and I'm going to, because I have a printout here: one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, page printout of just raw notes, like 10-point type. And I'm just going to spin the wheel and see where we end up here. I'm going to come to 20. How about this one? 2215. This will be young Elevena completed a paper entitled Theory of Mutable Cell Pathology, research on hormonal enzymes and pheromone emissions to unlock cells, found most effective on stem cells, grafting to organ tissue during conception, aka playing God during growth. Right? So this is just me talking now. In inception, conception, we are just a single cell, of sperm cell meets an egg, and then it starts, a zygote, right? When the sperm successfully attaches to the egg, it becomes a zygote, and then you have a period of cellular division. What happens if a manipulator comes in during that critical time and was able to manipulate the cell pathology, so you could, the stem cells is really kind of like a unexplained phenomenon at this point, right? Is how these things work. Like stem cells can become any type of cell, and it is kind of like miraculous, right, Kurt?
Yeah, yeah.
To think about. And they are starting to use stem cell technology to cure disease and to, and then, there's been ethical questions whether stem cell research should go on. You had like pro-life, right wingers saying don't mess with this. That this is, this is like fetal tissue, and it should be off limits. But they've come around. Right now, I think both sides have signed off on stem cell technology because they have been able to use plant-based stem cells now, instead of human fetal stem cells. But I mean, just right there, we've had decades of controversy in the scientific community that we've already gone through. And, when you hear a commercial on the radio on like the Sean Hannity show for, stem cell cosmetics, they say they can take the bags out of your eyes using stem cell technology. Then you just say, well, I guess the right wingers aren't so hung up on stem cells anymore, right? But in back to our story, Elevania is trying to unlock the wave question, syncing up and down patterns. But then there's also the hot and cold of it. There's also the magnetism of it. There's also the gravity of it. And when you get into quantum mechanics, the research really is not about um, elements, but about the attraction between subatomic particles, right? So there's attraction and detraction, and
Repelling.
right. So trying to unlock the wave patterns and syncing all these things, right? Because there's going to be all these different filters, right? If you're trying to manipulate a cell, because you want to grow humans into this other thing, you can apply, a lot of different filters. You can apply heat. You can apply, um, time. You can apply gravity. You can apply magnetism. You can apply electricity. You could apply, like all these different things. What are the myriad permutations of all of these different, applications? And Elevator will be setting AI to investigate trials of chemical enzymes in the brain catalyzing quantum entanglement. Another thing that's really, really fascinating about quantum mechanics is what they call, quantum tunneling. And then they have this quantum entanglement thing where, um, things that are not even next to each other can be manipulated. That's the crazy stuff, but that's like wizardry, really. And I just have a note here. Also study adrenal overdrive model triggering temporary tissue growth and the effect slash permanence on growth, strength, and cognition. So we will get into like experimenting with giantism and creating lab grown giants. And there'll be a lot of stuff like that. But that was just like one little paragraph that I zoomed in on to give, I guess, listeners a little sample of some of the notes that we're going to be using to build out the Substack, where it's going to be stories and prose that incorporate a lot of this stuff, all building up to our great Turbo comic, where Turbo is a glower, and she is resistant to the effects of different types of radiation, and a very very small percentage of the population is. Most of those people are pit fighters because they're stronger and faster, than everybody else. Relative speaking. But yeah, you can see like my mind is just like immersed in this crazy world, and it's a lot of fun building it
It's
out and
great.
coming to present it to Kurt. It's presenting to Kurt once a week and seeing how far we can get in turning this into some kind of media where
Well,
we can
let's take a moment
offer it out.
here. Let's take a moment here and reflect, which I think is perfect for closing this
The
episode.
timing.
Because, like I said, I want you to really have a nice, relaxing spring break because you deserve it. The thing about what I've been experiencing is a sense of accomplishment on this, but the most important thing. Let me just a lot of people I think would, sort of like, oh, only 12 pages. But once again, I just want to remind people that this is only happening every Sunday for about 3 or 4 hours. And, Jake and I are educators. We're very creative people. I think both of these things are going to be major in our life after having to maintain jobs and we're retired. But the feeling and the sense of accomplishment is a reward that can never be replaced with money and fame. The just every Sunday
Hold on
for
there.
3 4 hours,
I know.
3 or 4 hours, having this sense of accomplishment
Yeah,
and getting something
yeah,
done, and it's
yeah.
just it.
It
I
also
feel
exercises
our
demons.
society does not talk about it enough, and I find it to be a shame because I think when we're tasked with something to solve as a problem, issue, or whatever you want a threat, once again, critical thinking comes into play, and you got to hammer something out. You got to try things. Some things work, some things don't, so on and so forth. But life keeps going, and most importantly, Jake, our relationship gets deeper. And I just once again want to just take a moment.
I
Thank
love
you.
you, man.
I do love you too. So
Um,
it's great stuff. So we encourage others to find somebody, or you maybe already have a friend. He's making or she's making a comic, and you're making a comic, but why don't you make the same comic and have this kind of sense of accomplishment? So that's all I really want
yeah,
to mush about. That's all I really, having done this for a year with you,
that
2 years with
there was there there was a conversation I had when I was at that Brooklyn indie show. And, I spoke to a lot of people that were tabling, and they were just like, they had a comic or a mini comic or something out. And, if they had a comic out, I would always try to get a sense of like, wow, is this thing out? How's it selling? How you
yeah,
doing? Right. And then there was that one guy, it was like Fair Square Comics. And, he had this company, he's working on it for 10 years. They have like 30 something comics out. Um, and he told me, look, I'm not breaking the bank here.
yeah,
This is a grind. We're doing Kickstarter, and there's this point where you get to in the conversation with any of these people where it's like, let's just take a deep breath because when we're looking at all these external metrics, like how much money did you make,
yeah,
or were you able to quit your job or whatever, um, that's not why we're doing it. We're well, let's talk about the story now. Oh
yeah.
yeah, well this is like a Pulp Fiction story where there's guys and there's mob bosses that are after this dude and blah blah blah. That's what that's what we're really doing it for. Like, let's take a deep breath in and understand what's more than money. Like, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do? I would make a story, you know? So,
It's about
uh,
success equals accomplishment. Because even writing on the back of that, what would you do if you had all the money in the world? Would you have any success anymore? Would you succeed in anything anymore? Or would you just pay other people to solve your problems and not become a greater person? And when I say greater, it's just knowing more about yourself and your relationships with others. And these are just fundamental small things that we should never lose sight of. But I just am very against the idea that, oh, I can't remember where it was. I said this, but you know, I have experienced. There was a family get together, and I started getting into some anxiety, thinking how I was going to explain what it is that I'm doing. But more importantly, some of these family members can be a little cocky and say, "Oh, well, are you making any money?" And my
right, of
brain
course.
goes is like, "Well, if I'm
Well,
making enough
parents,
money,
that's like every
yeah. But
parent.
if I'm making enough money to not go into debt, I always, as an artist, I always feel like I'm a success. That's the thing. And I've always lived. I was taught very, very early, even pre-college. Um, and by the time I got out of college and was making it, you've really got to pick what you spend your money on, and
Yeah.
not going into debt is definitely a thing. Now, I wasn't always all that good about it and great. I'm not saying I've been perfect all my years here. I've had some bad times just as much as anybody else, but I grew and learned from that. And so you know, you and I worked
Yeah,
together
so
part of those years, so
so
that was a big thing.
my dad my dad my dad had this little anecdote about the tennis pro and the watchmaker. He said, well, there's a tennis pro, you know, and he makes millions of dollars and everything. And on the weekends, he likes to tinker with antique watches and he likes to repair antique watches.
Yeah,
And oh, that's cool. And they said, then you got the watchmaker who does it full time. And, you know, on the weekends, he likes to go out and play
the
tennis.
tennis. That's awesome.
Right. So
I
he,
love it.
you know, so at the end of the day, like, you know, we're all just working for our hobby. And if your hobby is, you know, your work, then you're rich, you know. And I tell my
Yes,
students that all the
yes,
time.
yes.
You know, I said, do you want to be a truck driver? Because that's going away, you know. You want to be,
Yeah,
you know, you want to be replaced by a vending machine, you know, because if you open a retail store, that's what could happen, you know. So, but artists will never be able to be replaced, or any
correct,
kind of creative,
correct.
you know, will never be able to replace. Like a machine can do it, but it's not going to be the human touch. And you know, and then also, you know, if you want to go, you know, if you want to wake up in the morning and look forward to your job, or at least parts of it, you know, then then work now to get into a career, you know, that does that, because that's what, you know, being rich is. I have a sign hanging up in my room that says education makes you rich. And, you know, I once in a while I ask my students, is this true or is this false? I said, I want to talk, you know, talk about your family, talk about your parents, your role models, right? Talk about Taylor Swift, talk about like everybody. Is it true that education makes you rich? And then, you know, that's when I point out that, you know, the word rich has multiple meanings, you know, and I think it was either me or my brother said, you know, when this came out, because we were pretty poor in the 70s. My dad was on, you know, he was laid off, and you know, he was working off the books, you know, like working with his hands, and you know, someone once said, "Are you rich?" Because we lived on the Upper West Side in this kind of like pre-war apartment, and there was a lot of rich people in the apartment. Nobody knew that we were on rent control. So, you know, people used to say, "Are you rich?" Because they used to come visit our house. Like I used to hang out with kids in the projects, and they would come over and say, "Are you rich?" And my brother said, "We're rich like in cake." And so, it was right. And I don't even remember if that was me or my brother, but it was like, you know, passed down as a quote. You know, a cute things kids say. And you know, because we did, you know, we were happy. We had a lot. to talk about, and with a lot of things to do. Did we have Rolls Royces? No. We had a 1966 Dodge Polara, but we didn't see ourselves as unhappy because of the money. And I had holes in my clothes, growing up, and probably still do now. So there you go.
All
But
right. Well, look, let's close this one down because, like I said, I want you to get out there, have a nice, relaxing time, and we'll get back together and in the saddle. So that's all I have. Let these people get back to reading comics, making them if they do. What do you have for the? What else do we have for them?
Yeah, so just a reminder to folks, this was kind of like an off, episode for us. Usually I'm drawing more in person and doing pages, but go check out our stream. You can see all of our back episodes, and don't forget to check in with Comics That Influence, where we do flip throughs, and the Indie Creator Exchange, where we do interviews with cool indie creators like us. So that's
Cool.
all I got, man.
Awesome. All right, brother.
Take it easy.
Yep.
Later.